coming in the fall of '08 would bring the Sunday law. And that is not what we're told in inspiration. We're told that it is disaster and disease calamities that will take us there. Now, mind you, of course, if we have major disasters and entire cities are swept away, there's an economic impact, right? That will be far beyond anything we've seen, I believe. Just imagine a city, a major city, being devastated, and all of those insurance claims on those high-rise buildings coming in all at the same time. Much of the financial difficulties last fall were a result of insurance companies receiving claims on investment policies that had gone bad. Just imagine. And you know, some of these buildings are insured more than once, so that they'll get paid out twice, for example. Some of the World Trade Center buildings, that was the case. All right, now notice as we develop this a little bit more, what inspiration tells us. Review and Herald, September 17, 1901. From the pulpits of the popular churches will be heard the statement that the world is being punished because Sunday is not honored as it should be. And it will require no great stretch of imagination for men to believe this. Why did she write that? Why would it require no great stretch? Does it require a stretch for men to believe this right now? For many men, it requires a stretch. Just to make this point, notice this. From the pulpits of the popular churches. There are some very popular pulpits in the land right now. Their message is not that God is bringing judgments upon us through calamity and devastation. Not generally. In fact, you might remember that a few years ago, 9/11, Jerry Falwell publicly stated that the events of 9/11 were a judgment of God. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. Do you also remember that he had to come back and publicly apologize because his peers in large ministries around the nation put pressure on him that this is not the message that we want to go out. So this is a shift, really, from where we are even now, when from the popular pulpits of the land is heard the statement that God is doing this. These devastating calamities in cities are a result of the hand of God because Sunday is not honored as it should be. Now, there is another reason why it doesn't require a stretch of the imagination, which she alludes to right here. They are guided by the enemy, and therefore they reach conclusions which are entirely false. So you can see what's developing is that through calamities and disease, we get moved toward a position where the finger is pointed at the violation of Sunday for the cause of these things. Now notice this, she gets a little more specific. Men in responsible positions will not only ignore and despise the Sabbath themselves, but from the sacred desk will urge upon the people the observance of the first day of the week, pleading tradition and custom in behalf of this man-made institution. They will point to calamities on land and sea, to the storms of wind, the floods, the earthquakes, the destruction by fire, as judgments indicating God's displeasure because Sunday is not sacredly observed. That's from Christian Service, page 155. And one more statement along these lines. This is from Last Day Events, page 129. Satan puts his interpretation upon events, and they think, as he would have them, that the calamities which fill the land are a result of Sunday breaking. Thinking to appease the wrath of God, these influential men make laws enforcing Sunday observance. So we're going to go back to our chart, and we see that this increase in disaster and disease, focused especially on the metropolitan areas, leads us into an agitation of the question of the enforcement of Sunday observance. Now, by the way, there's just something here that I want to insert, because this is what will lead us to the National Sunday Law. And we are told that there are whole cities that will be swept away in this devastation and this destruction that's coming. So I have a question for you. Because for many years, many Seventh-day Adventists have believed that the signal to leave the cities would be the National Sunday Law. But if, in fact, it's the destruction in the cities which takes us to the National Sunday Law, we have to rethink this. If, in fact, God wanted His people to stay in the cities through the destruction and the devastation and not leave them until after the Sunday Law, this would be the first time ever in Earth's history that God did not warn His people to get out of the way before the judgments came. You realize that? Because always in the past, God has warned His people of coming judgments and done so that they would be removed out of the way. Now, I know, some of us would like to think otherwise and would like to think, in fact, I know a pastor who says, I'm just going to die in the cities when they're destroyed. But this has never been God's plan. I mean, it really, from a human point of view, wouldn't it have been impressive if Lot and his family came tiptoeing out of the embers of Sodom? That would have been impressive. But that's not the way God works, right? He said you got to get out before the judgments come. Amen. We see the same thing in the case of the destruction of Jerusalem, right? Wouldn't it have been amazing if in the face of all that happened in Jerusalem, God's people are there standing? Yet in great controversy, Mrs. White says, not one Christian perished in the destruction of Jerusalem. And her next sentence is, why? Because they heeded Christ's warning and they left the city when the signal had been given. Now, I understand that part of this discussion about the Sunday Law being the signal comes from a statement in Testimonies, Volume 5. And I'm not going to take the time this morning to get into that. But I believe that just as the Bible is its own best interpreter, that the same thing works in the spirit of prophecy. That we need to look for everything we can find on a subject, and it makes it clear. And so on our website, backtoenoch.org, you can listen to a message there called Out of the Cities, and I, in detail, deal with the Testimonies Volume 5 statement. And it turns out that actually the signal to leave came a long time ago. So we find this increase in disaster and disease. It leads to this agitation of the Sunday Law question. By the way, some have suggested maybe the Sunday Law will be passed secretly. That doesn't fit inspiration, as I see it, because this is the great final test. And it's something that is agitated. So, not to suggest that there aren't secret movements behind the scenes, we know that, but in the final analysis, this becomes a major issue that's agitated publicly. In Revelation chapter 18, verse 1, we read this, after these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. We're talking here about the loud cry. And we find something interesting in the book Great Controversy, page 606. It has been confidently declared that this land could never become other than what it has been, the defender of religious freedom. But as the question of enforcing Sunday observance is widely agitated, the event so long doubted and disbelieved is seen to be approaching, and the third message will produce an effect which it could not have had before. Now I want to pause right here. Why is it that the third message, that's the message of the third angel in Revelation 14, produces an effect which it could not have had before? Well, for one thing, it is culturally relevant because it speaks to things that are happening right before people's eyes. And so it has a new credibility and an urgency to the world that it didn't have before. And there's another reason that it has power too, which we'll look at in a moment. But right now we're going to just place on the chart the third message swelling to a loud cry. Now, we're going to see something here as we continue that is a pattern. It's already on the chart, but I'm going to point it out to you. You have disaster and disease which increases over time. You have the third message swelling to a loud cry. We're starting a pattern. The pattern is that things start smaller and they get bigger over time. That there is an increasing intensity over time. And we'll see that with each aspect of end-time events as we take a closer look here. In the book Last Day Events on page 201, it says this, as the third message swells to a loud cry, and as great power and glory attend the closing work, the faithful people of God will partake of that glory. It is the latter rain which revives and strengthens them to pass through the time of trouble. Now, the latter rain